Good afternoon. I'm really honored to be invited to be part of this panel at the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the CDE. I am extremely grateful to the CDE and Williams College. My year in CDE was life-changing for good reasons and only in positive ways. I owe much of my professional development to the solid principles that I learned here, largely because I was taught to keep thinking and keep thinking always. Here I became a better human, chiseled by the variety, richness, and generosity of my teachers, colleagues, and friends from around the world. Thanks, Professor Sheehan. You gave me the chance at this time this year, and I'm thankful up to today. As honored as I am, I was a little concerned when Professor invited me to be in a panel with such brilliant people. I'm a practitioner. I have seen a lot of things, but I'm not a researcher. So what could I say regarding industrial policy after Washington Consensus? So, scared a little, I sought refuge in my experience. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it is and what lessons I can take from that. I was born in a coffee region under the import substitution star. I came to the CDE to learn about the Washington Consensus. I started my professional career at the IDB, promoting the closing of public development banks that were broken. I outlived the theory that the best productive policy is not policy at all. I designed and agonized, really agonized, over small projects that are beautiful patches of green, but did not scale up. I championed the importance of improving the business environment. I timidly explored more active policies to improve productivity and became an activist of public policies to foster innovation. And I am, almost a quarter century later, still curious about the topic. There is only limited data to evaluate seriously the Latin American experience with productive development policies. Data is scattered and time horizons for the evaluation of programs are undefined. Nevertheless, a dozen, which fit in 10 minutes, practice could be drawn from this quilted evidence. The first is the overarching lesson. There is no easy answer. Productive policies or their rejection require careful analysis, informed reasoning, and good judgment. Roderick, we're going to see tonight, put it beautifully when he said that nothing replaces thinking. The second lesson would be that the unseen hand is grand, but market and coordination failures slow down economic development. Despite macroeconomic reforms, Latin America suffers from chronic low growth and very low productivity. According to an IDB study, a typical Latin American country would have a per capita income higher by 54% if its productivity had grown like the rest of the world, and would almost double if its productivity were close to its full potential. An interesting case is Chile, the shining example of orthodoxy in Latin America. The country has increased the scope and depth of its promotion of productive policies in 2000 as a response to a declining dynamism of growth once the initial positive effects of the macroeconomic reforms to productivity wore down. After a steady increase in productivity of 3.1% between 86 and 97, the productivity gains fell to a sluggish 0.6% between 98 and 2007. So comes the third. Not surprisingly, productive policies have been active and actually never stopped in Latin America after the Washington Consensus. Pragmatism has been the rule of the game. Brazil, for example, never stopped its direct support to specific industries and continue to have a very, very active program of directed credit to promote what considers strategic sectors. Colombia, my country, has the business plans for world-class sectors that focus on needs of existing and promising sectors. I mentioned Chile before, and there are a lot of examples. But one thing that I love is that Chilean consultants are the new advocates of good productive policies around Latin America. And I love it because it's like Nixon going to China. They can do it because they cannot be suspected of heresy. The fourth lesson would be that doing these policies, the traditional promotion of investment, particularly foreign investment, is not enough. A recent study by the IDB made clear that Latin America does not suffer so much from insufficient investment as from low productivity growth. So maybe, again, the unseen hand may need a helping hand that promotes better ways of using existing resources. One important lesson for me is that macroeconomics do set the stage, but microeconomic analysis is required to understand, design, and monitor productive policies. The problem is that there are more macroeconomists in policy making and business administrators lobbying them than well-informed microeconomist practitioners in the ground. The sixth lesson would be that the provision of public goods and horizontal interventions are preferable but may be insufficient. Once you cross this broad, let's call tenet, comfort zone, you're doomed to peak. If you have to peak, favor sectors that have proven record and an identified market, or favor general technology platforms as information technologies that will have positive spillover effects on other sectors. Support for innovation is an excellent bet, but to be effective, it has to be focused. That means you have to pick. One lesson that was hard for me to learn is that, of course, small is beautiful, but for productivity, big is better. There is a frequent confusion between social policy and productive policy when supporting micro and small enterprises. Many small firms show very low productivity, particularly in the informal sector that is very large in Latin America and the Caribbean. The IDB productivity study documents consistently higher levels of productivity and increasing productivity in larger firms in Chile, Uruguay, Colombia, El Salvador, Venezuela, and Bolivia. Something that you mentioned already, which I completely agree, joint exploration between public and private sector is essential. When designing and implementing productive policies, a strong leadership from the public sector is necessary, and also is very important an active participation of the private sector, including co-financing the cost of implementation. As you mentioned also, even in the best designed policies, beware of the public sector failures, such as inconsistency, risk of capture, and principal agent problems. Unfortunately, there is too much evidence in Latin America of the poor delivery mechanisms to implement productive policies, of overlapping structures and limited coordination, of rent-seeking, and of lack of effective monitoring and evaluation. To manage this risk, it is necessary to have a strategic plan in mind rather than ad hoc interventions, strong public institutions, adequate and predictable funds, transparency, public information, and monitoring and evaluation mechanism in place. More access to information and a more mature private and public sector exponentially increase the chances of success. The 10th lesson would be that coordination failures and information asymmetries do slow economic development. Efforts to promote and facilitate association and innovation have proved to be effective ways to increase productivity and create new markets. The pisco industry, like in the pisco sour in Peru, is a case in point, just to mention one example that merits a toast. So deliver services to improve business management and foster business alliances that promote innovation. The 11th lesson would be having clear goals, transitory interventions, and exit strategy and evaluation criteria are absolutely essential. And I'm going to quote, and I admire Andres Rodriguez, who has pointed out, and I quote, that the widespread concern about the dangers of microeconomic interventions springs in large part from the import substitution experience. In most countries, the policy was captured by the protected firms, which push for wider and lengthier protection without taking the necessary steps to raise productivity and curb their dependence on high tariffs. So finally, I come to the 12th, maybe which should be the first. One size does not fit all. Policy interventions depend on economics, country governance, public institutions, private development, and recent history. This is extremely well illustrated in the support for rice production in Argentina, which was a success, and Costa Rica, that was short of a failure in the same decade. Now, there is an official turnaround of the major Washington consensual parties. The recent speech by the president of the World Bank at Georgetown University attests to that. He publicly acknowledged that no one has a monopoly on the answers when talking about development economics. In the particular case of productivity and the Inter-American Development Bank, after being extremely cautious about it, last year the IDB formally stated that with the right economic policies, governments can do and can go a long way towards solving the productivity problem and hence accelerate growth. The IDB is still officially, and I'm not quoting here, the IDB is still officially very guarded when presenting specific recommendations, but we're still inclined to market-oriented horizontal policies, and we have a partiality for innovation. When pushing in a recent debate, a colleague of mine said, and I quote, "Productive development policies need to be proactive but restrained, as they have no guarantee of success and can be easily captured." So we have to have proactivity and restraint. That means that we're still looking for answers, and also that we're very good covering our backs. I had the best teachers at the CDE for 1 year. Later, I have had experience teaching me for 24 years. I learned from both that you always have to rely on honest, hard, and informed reasoning. The good thing, and I'm saying this borrowing from Goethe, is that thinking is more interesting than knowing. Thank you very much.